Welcome to the England Rugby Pod. Hi guys, thanks for downloading episode 95. The Premiership has kicked off once again for the 2018-19 season, and we've got a lot to talk about. You're listening to the England Rugby Pod, the rugby podcast that believes England will win the World Cup in 2019. Hey guys, welcome back again. Apologies for the delay in getting an episode out to you. It's becoming a bit of a theme. We will do our best to get things back on track and get a more regular, episodes out to you more regularly. But in the meantime, it does mean we've got loads to talk about, and of course, to do that with me, I'm joined by Dan. Hi, mate.
Hey, buddy. But in fairness, we had the wedding. And then I was sunning myself in Spain, and you were running around all week trying to find cat food. So, it's been busy. This is
true. We have been busy, but that's no excuse.
It is no excuse.
We have a job to do. But the good news is it's given a number of our sort of diehard fans a chance to reach out, and we've got loads of questions from a number of emails. I'm going to go through a few of them today. Give us something to talk about, and then I know that you've got some stuff you want to talk about a little bit later on. Just before I start that, we've had another review, short and sweet. It's from Bobbert23. The name rings a bell.
Does it?
Yeah, I don't know why. As in, I think we may have had something from him before, but this was posted recently. It's 5 stars. He said, "I really enjoy the podcast, guys. I'm looking forward to the international game coverage from you. Keep up the good work and great banter." So
legend. Thanks, Bobbert.
Bobbert23.
Bobbert23, my bad.
I'm going to pretend that Bobbert23 previously hated us, and we've turned him around like we've done with all the others. But
no. He sent a nice one. I think he's a steadfast. I think he's one of our.
Maybe he's emailed. Maybe he's emailed us before and couldn't get couldn't work out, because Apple certainly don't make it easy to post reviews on iTunes, but. Maybe that was what it was. He's emailed us and said he was going to review us, and now he has done.
Either way, the guy's been nice, and he says some very clever stuff. He's a legend.
Fair enough. So there you go. For another 5 stars, always appreciated. So on to a few of these emails. First one is from Toby Seller. He titles the email "Questions?" He says, "Hi guys. To make up for the disgraceful lack of emails to the pod, I have a few questions." Yeah. I'm assuming he means a disgraceful lack of emails from himself, or is he suggesting
I think it's from everyone?
Not enough people are emailing us? Well, this week's making up for it. He says, "Being a die-hard rugby fan, as I know you two are, it's always frustrating seeing football as a more popular sport than rugby. Why do you think, in our country at least, footy is played and watched more than a rugger? And do you think that rugby is getting more popular here? Cheers, guys. The pod's doing great. Don't worry, I've already left my 5 stars. PS, would love a player profile on Manu Tuilagi."
Oh, good call.
So
thanks. Sorry, was it Toby?
It was Toby Seller.
Yeah, thanks, Toby. I think the short answer to that is accessibility from a football versus rugby perspective, isn't it? Football's... So the reality is, if you think, like, football is played more widely, more fan, but also in a park, you can just chuck down some jumpers and have a game of football. You can't really do that with rugby.
I don't know. The contact side of it, sure, but you could just as easily play a game of touch.
But yeah, you can do a good game of touch, but it's not quite the same, is it? Like, you can't really put together a full scrum and.
No, true. But I suppose, take New Zealand as an example. That same rule applies. It's easier for them to put down a football and kick a ball around, and yet, from the age of about 3, it's almost like a religion.
Don't even speak to me about New Zealand. They're really pissing me off at the moment. They are so good.
Wow.
They are. Did you see them against Australia?
I didn't. I did see reviews, and we will definitely need to be discussing that later, because I've got.
Yeah, we will discuss that later, because they're annoying me how good they are.
But
to
be the best, you got to beat the best. So we want them to be that good, and then we just want to be better. That's the key.
Exactly. But yeah, back to that. I mean, I think the football rugby thing also is sort of a tradition, isn't it? Football is a lot more widely played. By the way, Toby, I completely agree with you. It pisses me off. Football pisses me off generally. although I do still watch a fair bit of it. But it's, I think rugby is growing, definitely. I think it's becoming more accessible. It has traditionally been like a public school game, and I think it's getting a lot more accessible. I think there's still a hell of a long way to go, but I do think it is becoming more accessible. The only thing that worries me is the amount of press going on around sort of concussions, head injuries, whether that's going to deter some people, or certainly maybe deter parents from like encouraging their kids to play. I don't know, but that's the only thing that I think might put a bit of a spanner in the works.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It's 100% becoming more accessible. You don't have to go back that far to see most rugby players, certainly in England, posh public school boys, they were the only ones that had access to it. And now you see people from all walks of life who simply identify that, with a game that's awesome. It's not a game where people fall around on the floor pretending to be injured to try and pick up penalties. Instead, they, try their hardest to not be seen to have fallen down on the floor when, in fact, they're dying somewhere. It's one of those games that's, I think, appeals to people in a way that it never used to.
Definitely. And sorry, carry on. Sorry, mate.
Well, no, and I was going to say, and from a fan's perspective, I don't know when the last time you went to a football match was, but I went to one a few years ago and kind of went, I just don't really want to do this again because it's not enjoyable in the same way. Like half the people, and that's probably an exaggeration, but a huge proportion of the people that go to these games are there for the wrong reasons. I mean, we've got a friend who's got his company used to have a box at the Emirates. Went to a few games to watch Arsenal play.
Not exactly a hardcore fan.
No. It's great. Obviously, having a box, it's a completely different experience. I really enjoyed that. But the box itself sits just above the away stand, and you sit there looking over the balcony, just going, these people, like 50% of them, they spend the entire match just staring at each other, across the divide where the away fans meet the
50%. No, 50% a bit high.
It's probably an exaggeration, but certainly, far too many are more concerned about shouting abuse at other fans across the sort of the barrier, the divide, than they are in actually watching the game and seeing what's going on. And I find it bizarre. Like you're spending all this money on tickets, and they're not cheap. To go and not really pay that much attention to the game. Whereas you go to rugby and everyone is absolutely, focused on the game. The fans intermingle, they banter with each other. It's fun, it's family friendly, and that's only good for the game. And I think more and more people, more and more people I speak to who are football fans first and foremost, when it comes to taking their kids to games, they're thinking, they're moving towards the rugby because it's just better for kids. So
yeah, I completely agree with that. With regards to the football thing, in all honesty, I don't really care about that. I mean, let that do. So from my perspective, a few points, and then I got a question I wanted to ask you on this actually. So I also think the top level international players are becoming more sort of celebritized, if that's a word.
Yeah,
and that is automatically going to give it more more knowledge. But you see the likes of Maro Toje doing quite a few ads and things. I think Johnny Wilkinson was the original to go widespread.
The catalyst.
Exactly, and I think that helps. But here's the question I have for you. So you're saying about going to games. So I was having a chat with a few of the rugby boys down where I live the other day, and we're saying because we were talking about the A-League games in the Premiership. And just saying, if I lived by a stadium, I'd go every Monday night and watch an A-League game. It's like £2 to get in or whatever, or even free, I think. And I love going to rugby games. However, on an England game, if it's like a Six Nations, I'd love to be at Twickenham. But I almost prefer watching an England game on the TV than being at Twickenham.
Yeah, I know what you mean, but
purely from a rugby point of view.
I think that's a hardcore fan thing. You and I, we're on the same page. In that respect, we'd rather watch it so we can see absolutely everything that happens and listen to the commentary and see every breakdown but I think it's a different experience. You know, we've both been to
I
Twickenham
love
on numerous
Twickenham,
occasions. It's a different experience. But so I think there's an element of that that's probably the same in football and across all sports. You know, the die-hard fans that are really interested in the game itself. They want to see all the details. But I don't know. It is becoming more accessible for sure. In answer to his question. And I think the other thing, of course, is let's not forget. You know, football, and it's still miles ahead. In this respect, but football pays so much money. So you have these young kids growing up thinking, how can I get rich doing something that I enjoy? And they all want to be footballers and earn millions and millions of pounds. And, that's great if you're,
Would you rather be a professional footballer or a professional rugby player? Be honest.
For the job itself, rugby.
With the
football salary, please. But I think though, as we're seeing the salaries in rugby going up all the time. You know, players are often now with sponsorship deals and everything else thrown in on £500,000 a year. Now you can't really complain about £500,000 a year. So I think rugby, is definitely becoming a sport that now appeals to youngsters in that respect. You know, they look at it and think, oh, I can be, a wealthy person at the same time.
Good living
yeah.
It, but
whereas perhaps it wasn't that long ago. Well, it wasn't that long ago when first it was amateur, and then even when it became professional, you got paid a fairly standard salary, better than average, but not a lot. Whereas these days it is an elite sport in terms of what it pays. So I think that probably helps as well. I hope it doesn't go the same way as football. I hope we don't start seeing people getting paid millions, but inevitably it's going to keep going up, isn't it? Because
but the problem is, so there was and I don't know this guy's name, but I think he's like the head of the Gallagher Premiership or something of the organisation, and he was saying it's just not sustainable for the wages to keep going up. So the only team in the Premiership that made profit last year was Exeter.
Really?
I think it was Saracens who lost 8 million, or Saracens or Quins. One lost 8 million, one lost 6 million. I mean, how sustainable is that?
Mm.
I mean, luckily they've got rich guys behind it, but that's...
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess we watch this space and see, but hopefully that's answered Toby's question as far as football versus rugby. In reference to the other thing he said about the player profile on Mani Tuilagi, consider it on the checklist of what's coming soon. Because
that's a good one. That's a good.
I too would like a player profile on Mani Tuilagi. So
I'm looking forward to you doing it, mate.
Me too. I think most of our listeners are. That's the one when you're away, right?
I just the research. I was just sort of pub off on you. Maybe even a joint effort.
Oh, okay, yeah, that would be unique. Okay, cool. So nice. Appreciate that, Toby. Keep those emails coming, guys. So our next one is from. This one threw me a bit. It's Felix Rusby, which is Rusby.
That could be his name, because I can't understand how that would be a play.
I don't think it's a typo, given that it's actually come up as his name.
Maybe his name. Yeah, maybe his name.
So I think he's called Felix Rusby.
That's a cool name.
It is, if for someone who's into rugby. Anyway, he says, "Hi, England Rugby Pod. As my mail heading would suggest," which he says, I should start with that, actually. The title of his email is "You Make Bod Look Like an Amateur."
Ah, legend.
He says, as my email heading would suggest, you two are both founts of knowledge. When it comes to rugby expertise, there's no duo wiser or pair more informed than you two. I didn't write this.
I'm going to say
I would have written to you both. I would have written you both a 5-star review, but alas, I listened to you both on Spotify, so I don't think I'm able to give you the stars that you deserve. When I first listened to you lads, I was slow to give my favour, having come from listening to Hugo Monnier and Chris Jones on the Rugby Union Weekly, who we've obviously mentioned before. However, you won me over. I love that you guys give honest, down-to-earth opinions with a bit of dreaming thrown in too. But most of all, it's great that you post throughout the year and during the off-season. When there's no English rugby to watch, you keep me going, keep it up. So to you, apologies that it's taken us so long to get this episode out. We will try our best to keep them more regular. He goes on.
There's more.
There's more.
Good, carry on.
I have a few questions to ask you guys. Hopefully you'll be able to discuss them on the next pod. Here we go. First of all, with the new Premiership season kicking off on the 31st, I wanted to ask what you thought about the state of the English Premiership and whether it's conducive to a strong England team. I think this issue has 2 or 3 points. I go to university in Bristol and I'm excited to see how the Bears do this season. But I wonder
hang on. Is it UWE or is it Bristol?
He's not on the phone, mate.
I know, Andy. I thought you would know.
I don't.
Okay, sorry, carry on.
Shall I continue?
Please do.
Okay. Where did I get to? State of the English Premiership, whether it's conducted a strong England team. I think the issue has 2 points. As I say, goes to Bristol. He's excited to see how the Bears do this season, but I wonder how they'll cope in the top tier of English rugby. It's always been notoriously difficult for clubs to make the transition, and I worry the issue remains. What do you think about the possibility of ring-fencing the Premiership, which would give teams the security and time to develop? I'm going to go through all the questions, because otherwise, and then we'll come back to the answers. Furthermore, and this is something that I've wondered for a while, how important do you think it is for good players to be playing in winning clubs? Danny Cipriani has just moved to Gloucester, which as a cherry and white fan makes me very happy. But do you think it's important that Gloucester is doing well for him to be recognised? And this applied to players like George Ford at Leicester, had a bad season. He loses his place in the... So he says, George Ford at Leicester have a bad season, he loses his place in England, in the England side. But perhaps a more significant example as the European power of rugby shifted with Leinster taking the trophy from Saracens, we also saw England fall away and Ireland rise to prominence. Must a club be successful for its players to be successful, or can players still be world-class in less classy teams? Finally, also I wanted to know what you think about developing players. I went to primary school with Joe Cokanasiga, though I was the rugby player back then. He only wanted to play football. And he seems to be coming through pretty well. Likewise, Marcus Smith and the other backs are looking promising. But there's been quite a lot of comments suggesting that English rugby doesn't produce quality English flankers. Apparently, they're encouraged to hit the gym, but not really to compete at the breakdown. What do you think? And more generally, does English and perhaps European rugby encourage a philosophy of size over skill, where the South develops skills better? There's some more, but we'll do that in a minute because this is getting on a bit. We're going to forget what
we're going to answer. So we'll go through. These are actually really good questions. So firstly, the first point, how fickle am I? Felix says nice stuff. You and I have known each other for 20 years. We were flatmates for God knows how long. I consider him as close a friend as I consider you, just because he said nice stuff. I'm actually updating my Facebook profile now. So for questions, and I'm probably doing this in the wrong order, but I had that written down, exactly that, about the success of the club versus the player, because Northampton last year obviously had a shocking year, as did Quins. And you look, Rob Shaw and Danny Kerr didn't have a great year for England. Courtney Laws wasn't first choice for England. Dylan Hartley was injured, so that's slightly different. But I do think that matters. Mm-hmm. I think if you're playing for a successful club, that does make a difference to how you're playing for England as well. I don't know how big a difference. I don't think.
Yeah, I think the key thing here is, we're not suggesting that you have to be the number one team. We're not suggesting that England should be the best team in the Premiership. Like in Argentina, for example, the way that they, use pretty much one team to make up their entire international side. But I think you have to be certainly the top half of the table. Like the players who are trying to. It's not just about being noticed, I don't think, either. I think you naturally, at all levels, raise your game if you're playing with better players. They also give you opportunities to do more. We'll come on to Cipriani and what he... Well, actually, no, that's something for later. And Moment of Genius. So perhaps that's slightly different. But I think, you definitely need form. Form creates form, doesn't it? So
I have a slight fear about this. I don't know necessarily if it's about winning and losing. I think it's about the sort of the camp, how happy the camp is. So someone like Worcester with the bent here, they know they're going to be towards the bottom of the table. And I say that with all due respect to them. So it's not necessarily, they're not completely disgruntled. Whereas you look at Quins last year, there were some major issues there. There was a lot of infighting. There was a lot of problems. And I think that is where the impact happened. I think if the players are sort of pissed off, not happy, not like falling out of love with rugby, that's where I think the major issue is. I don't necessarily winning, losing, of course, because like you say, form does create form, so that plays a part. But I think more than anything, it's the sort of mental side, like how happy are the people generally in rugby? You know, are they coming from a good environment? Because even if the England environment's good, if you're coming into that having a shit environment, you're almost exhausted before you start.
Yeah,
mentally.
I guess as well, performance probably over results. You know, a team that wins ugly on a regular basis probably isn't going to. You take it, you know, as a club and for the results, but in terms of the impact that has on a player for how he's going to perform, you know, clearly if you're winning ugly, the players are not performing at the best of their ability. They're you know, there's an important lesson in that you know, that ability to get the win at all costs, and that's a value at international level as well, particularly in knockout rugby. But I don't know. Yeah, in terms of applying it to what the question here is,
it's a really good point I think that he's making. But Felix is saying,
I mean, the bottom line is if you're performing really badly, then for sure it's gonna impact. You know, barring very special individuals, it's going to impact your performances on the pitch in an England shirt. You know, unless I think the thing with Worcester, the big one there is that Ben Teo is kind of out on his own.
Yeah,
it's not like there's a group of them. It's not like there's a group of England players who are all in this kind of losing mentality. It's one guy, and he knows there's only so much he can do. But almost in his situation, it's different because you flip it on its head and say, you know, he's still with them because it's out of a sense of pride. You know, he has pride in that shirt that he's wearing, and if anything, that maybe, despite the results, gives him that little extra boost. I mean, he's said, hasn't he, that he's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Wasn't he looking around this summer?
Sorry?
Wasn't he looking around this summer?
No, I think people were probably sniffing around him, but I think he said, you know, I've got a contract and it lasts until whenever it is, and I'm not interested in breaking it. So
unless a lot of money comes off.
He's going to, when the contract comes to an end, he's going to move. He's going to need to, because I do think it's holding him back from being the best that he can be. Which maybe that's the answer to the question.
Maybe that's another point as well. I think it's a mixture of everything.
To be the best that you can be, you need to be surrounded by the best players, and you need to be performing at the very top level. And I suppose the other thing, let's not forget, is the teams at the bottom are not getting as much exposure to kind of the other top teams outside of just the Premiership. You know, your Saracens and the like, you know, they're getting to play the Leinsters of this world, which is, you know, massive experience. In terms of playing against, I suppose, different styles of rugby, if the Premiership is a particular style. So I think there's huge advantage in that as well. And obviously, to get that, you've got to be in a team that's performing. So,
mate. I think we absolutely bossed that question.
I think so. I think he'll be happy.
Yeah, I think so.
What was this?
I hope so. I hope you're happy, Felix. Wasn't there one before it though?
There was, but you kept interrupting me, and it's all gone. He was talking specifically about Bristol and how he's hoping that Bristol are going to do well this season, but are we concerned that teams coming up into the Premiership struggle? Was that it?
I thought that. So I know that was the point. I thought there was one just before. Do you not have it? But it doesn't matter. So look at the Bristol thing. I think, the teams coming up to the Premiership will struggle. Where it's slightly different, because it was so hard for them to sign players because of the playoff system. So players aren't necessarily going to commit until they know that the team's going to be a Premiership club. But they've ditched the playoff system now, haven't they, in the Championship? So with that ditch, you know, players will be like, look, Bristol are beating everyone. They are clearly going to be promoted, because it's not going to go down to a one-off day or one-off 2 days from sort of playoff final. So I think you can plan earlier, which I think was massive help.
Yeah.
And I think Bristol are slightly unique as well. I mean, just the amount they spent on players. I mean, Charles Beardsley's probably on $1 million a year. They've got the money and they've got a good team. Watching them, so I watched them play against Bath. By the way, that was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. I'm just digressing a little bit. So I was on holiday with Sarah, and I said, can we go into town so I can watch the Bristol Bath match at the sports bar?
For those of you that are listening, and obviously don't know who Sarah is, this is Dan's girlfriend.
Easy. It is my girlfriend. What am I on about? But either way, so I was with her and said, can we watch it? So I'm there watching the match. On the next TV is Miss Universe. And then the bikini thing comes on. Do you know how hard it is when you're with your missus to try not to look at them walking out in bikinis? It was literally, it was so impressive the way I just managed to roll the eyes so I could take in both the rugby and the Miss Universe bikinis. I feel like you've stopped listening.
Sorry, mate. Were you talking? I
thought you'd be proud of me.
Felix, I can only apologise. Unfortunately, I can only control one half of this pod.
But to get back to the Bristol point, I think that is a fair point. Clubs coming up are going to struggle. I personally don't want them to ring fence the Premiership. I think it takes away so much from it if you don't have relegation, if you don't have promotion from a Championship. What I'd like to see is the RFU put more money into, or I don't know the answer to this, but I'd like the Championship, perhaps the clubs like more on loan, so like the players from the Premiership clubs can go more on loan to the Championship.
Do you know what I would like? I'd like there to be a draft, like they have in American football.
So, but where did the draft come from?
From all the players that come up into each season, all the new players. Maybe even do a mixture, move around some of the top players as well. Just basically get it so that you don't just get one club and that one club.
I'm not sure. So I like the concept, I get, but I'm not sure you've thought this through. If Saracens, for argument's sake, have spent 5 years bringing the player through their academy, spending lots of money, they don't want to then release him to the draft.
Oh, so maybe there's caveats. If you bring the player through yourself, then you can keep them out of the draft, or
So maybe a draft, but then where do the players come from? Just
thin air. I don't know, mate. It's not my job to work that. I just like the idea of mixing up and creating a more level playing. I don't know. It's probably a really bad idea. I'm jealous when I see people getting together to do draft parties for the NHS. No, the NFL, and it just looks like a lot of fun, and I don't really understand it. So I figure if they can do it with all their padding, we can do it with our hardcore occasional shoulder pads.
I think we can sort of say that that's not going to work, but I don't. So, what are your thoughts on that, though? Would you like the Premiership to be ring fenced?
No.
I see the benefit to it, but I think it takes away so much from it.
Yeah, totally. And teams at the bottom have nothing to watch. They can just be like, we'll play a weak side because it doesn't really matter. We've lost now anyway. Do you know? I think there always has to be a kind of a consequence to losing.
So I agree with that. But like one of the things that is quite interesting. So this is why the ring fencing thing in my head is still a possibility. I wouldn't want it, and this probably won't happen. But Ealing Trailfinders in the Championship, they actually got beaten fairly easily by London Irish, but they are potentially one of the contenders to win the Championship, allegedly beforehand. But they don't really have the ability to be a Premiership team.
Yeah, well, this is the issue with a few of them, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So if one of the teams did win it, and it's like you won, but you can't come up anyway. So I think there's only
maybe you have to give up. Maybe you have to give up your stadium.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just give up your stadium.
I don't know. You're right. That it's there isn't a simple solution, but I think ring fencing would be a mistake. I think it would just, fans as well. Fans who are supporting teams in the Championship. They want their teams to get up into the Premiership, and I think you'd lose some of that if there wasn't that option.
Yeah, you absolutely would. It is. I mean, so that's the thing. Winning the Premiership, fine, but if you're a Championship team, winning the Championship without promotion, if you're just like, okay, we would top of the league will go again next year. It's not you're not the best club in Britain because it's a Premiership. I don't like ring fencing. I understand why it's in theory a good idea because it gives clubs time to sort of solidify, spend money on getting players without having to worry about getting relegated and not being able to afford the salaries and everything.
And it means that from an individual player's point of view, coming up the ranks, the only way they're ever getting to the top tier is by moving clubs. They can't be involved in kind of, helping their team to get there. Sorry.
So like Gareth Simpson, who won the Championship with Exeter, then won the Premiership with Exeter.
Well, exactly.
And so,
massive thing. I think the answer there is simply no. We do not agree with the idea of ring fencing the Premiership, but we're going to let someone else come up with a solution to the problems that you mentioned.
Yeah, I'm not sure we absolutely bossed the first one. I think we absolutely didn't boss this one.
Well, I don't know. But anyway, so the next one that he's already asked us was about size over skill.
To me, sorry.
No, just refreshing the question. Do we think the Premiership has a bit of a sort of ethos of size over skill, where perhaps the Southern Hemisphere develops skills first? Not that I think that you can look at them and say that they're not big enough in the Southern Hemisphere.
The All Blacks are not huge. Their backs aren't huge. So I agree with his point. I think we put too much emphasis on size. I would like to see, personally, less subs.
Yeah.
I don't think you need less. So people have to be fitter so they can last 80 minutes. And I think that might help with injuries as well, because otherwise players have specifically been built for 30 minutes. And they've just been built up. And there's such a weight emphasis and a sort of size emphasis.
I mean,
rugby is a game of evasion and it's a game of skill. I still truly believe that. And I think you need to put, and I wish that was enabled, but like I say, a good big instead of a good little one.
Well, yeah. I think that it leads into something we're going to talk about a little bit later on when we discuss the All Blacks. But part of me does think, well, hold on. The Northern Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere have very different styles. In the Southern Hemisphere, you see massive scorelines. And sometimes that can mean, a very one-sided game. But to me, a lot of Southern Hemisphere rugby leans too much towards sevens with 15 men on the pitch or 30 men on the pitch. And I think there's a lot more to rugby than just flinging the ball wide and, getting guys with a lot of pace and the ability to do ridiculous steps to kind of run round their opposite men.
But haven't they addressed that quite a lot? I mean, the All Blacks' defence is awesome.
No. So this is before we go on to discussing them in particular. I'm just looking at the Northern versus Southern size versus skill kind of debate. And are we full of players that are all just too big? The only guy that springs to mind when you think of kind of gym bunny and rugby is James Haskell.
No, so I think he's all right.
Well, I do too. I don't think he actually sits in that bracket, at least not anymore. There was a time.
Skelton. Look at some of the second row. And you even hear the likes of someone like Sam Warburton. He's not his natural size.
No.
And a lot of these players aren't their natural size. So,
but if you look at the England team, kind of as it roughly stands at the moment, who would you say is too big?
The pack.
Well, no, but who specifically? Like who would you say needs to trim down and work on their pace rather than? Like I'm picturing the team and I'm thinking there isn't really anyone. I don't look at a Rob Shaw and think, well, you're too big, mate. You need to just work on your pace and get smaller.
Yeah, I mean, Rob Shaw's workhorse, but
Billy's trimmed down, but then he was just a bit overweight before. You've got the front row maybe with
Billy's been on the chicken nugs,
not with Mako, but
he's been on the chicken nugs as well.
Yeah, but Courtney Laws. Okay, he's a big guy, but he's not like he doesn't walk around with a 12 pack and biceps that are bigger than most people's thighs.
So that's
he's just a bit of a tree. You look at I mean, who else? Who do you think is
No,
kind of too muscle
I think it's
bound?
quite interesting. In the England team, actually, I don't think there is a major problem. But in the Premiership, I think there are players who have just bulked up for the
Yeah.
sake of it. But maybe that's the answer. The fact that the guy's getting through to England because international rugby is so intense, you must have that fitness as well. So maybe the size thing isn't. But equally, maybe these players are like, I'm probably not going to make it anyway.
Well,
And the
that's it.
clubs just want them first
If
minute.
I haven't got the skill to make it, maybe I can get massive and do it that way. But when you're playing against world class sides, they can deal with you regardless of your size. So I think
And I want to be a bit careful because when I was just to go Exeter Leicester, that game, when I was watching that, Exeter, like Matt Kovacic was probably the player of the whole week across the board at flanker. And actually, we'll cover the other question of this because Felix said about flankers, so we're not producing flankers. I would say we haven't been, but at the moment, I think we've got a load of good choices. We've got the Currys, we've got Sam Underhill, we've got Kovacic. But Kovacic has really bulked up, but he was still mobile with it. Sam Simmons, when I saw him, and maybe I don't know, maybe I'm getting this wrong, but to me, I was like, he looks so much bigger, bulkier. And it actually annoyed me. I was like, no, because he's, part of him was his pace. But he seems to have kept that. He doesn't seem to have gone too big.
I wonder, the thing with Sam Simmons, we've both said we'd love to see him at 6. Eddie has said he's an 8. I wonder if Eddie has said to him, you're a number 8, not a flanker for us, and therefore you need to get bigger.
So that's actually a good point. So saying who's too big. To me, Nathan Hughes is huge, and that's fine for number 8. He's
naturally
he doesn't have that
big.
Yeah, he's naturally
he's more of a lump. He's not. I wouldn't look at him and think he's someone who spends too much time in the gym. I do think that Nathan Hughes is size over skill. Personally,
yeah, and so that's what I'm saying. Whereas with Sam Simmons, who's got that, so that'll be interesting comparing those two, sort of seeing who Eddie goes for because Sam Simmons needs sort of more skill. He's got the more agility as well, whereas Nathan Hughes just a lump. But that sounds disrespectful. I don't mean it like that. But that's where his, that's his sort of USP as such.
Yeah, well, Felix's final question is actually still on topic because he said, sorry this email's so long. We hadn't noticed, Felix. Injuries and subs. Last season saw more injuries than ever, and a lot of people have been claiming it's down to the size and physicality of modern players. What do you think of the suggestion of reducing the number of subs, as you've mentioned? The theory is without fresh, tactically replaced subs coming on, tearing into tired players will have to be fitter, lighter, and won't be going up against fresh opposition when tired. What do you think? So it's kind of just following on from what you've already said, but I agree. I think he's spot on.
But it's a good, it's again a good point. I would like to see that. I would like to see less subs and players.
What do we think?
Almost annoys me.
Squad of 20? Or is that it's taking away 3 too many? I mean, I guess the big question, should the front row be able to last 80 minutes? I mean, they should, right?
Yeah. I want every player to be able to last 80 minutes. But, what is it? Is it 7? Can you use 8 subs now? You can use all 8.
Yeah. No, you can use them.
Yeah, I'd like to be able to use 2 or 3.
So have 8, but you can only use a few of them. So depending on what you need, so they go back to being reserves. They go back to being replacements rather than finishers, basically.
Yeah. That's what I'd like to, and I know it's a tough one because it almost adds excitement to the game, bringing on the fresh legs and keeping the intensity. But actually, I think it adds to be excitement where people are tired because more gaps open up. And so I personally would like to see, 2 or 3 subs, 3 maximum, and see players actually, start using the, having to be fitter, probably slightly leaner. They'll still be huge, let's face it. They'll still be huge, but just that bit leaner. The injury thing, it's hard to know. Does the size? I don't know. I honestly don't know the answer to that. I think one of the things with the injury is the more awareness of it now. It's been recorded more, so it's more in your face.
So you think a lot of the injuries are things that people would have had in the past and just shoved an ice pack on and then got on with it the following week. Whereas now it's being identified as more of a thing that needs conditioning, and therefore it's being reported as.
Yeah, no, I'm talking shit. I think size does make a massive difference because I was thinking in my head, I was thinking like the concussions and things. In the old days, just like get over it. Whereas now people are a lot more aware of it. But I was thinking actually a lot of players, like pretty much every top level Premiership player is going to have a couple of surgeries throughout their career.
Mm.
And I think a lot of that is to do, like, these guys are absolute machines now.
It's definitely a debate that will rage on. And it's a tough one to know what to do because, you know, as the fans, we want to see these guys. We want them to be big and, you know, and sort of gladiatorial. But equally, yeah, we don't want to see, particularly, you know, the likes of Billy and Manu, you know, these guys that we desperately want to see performing for England and constantly injured. You know, we want to save them up for the big games, but we also need them to be playing in between in order to be at their best. So, yeah, don't know what the solution is, but why not test a change to the subs ruling and see if that has an impact?
Yeah, it's none of this is going to happen before the World Cup, though, is it?
No, so it's not.
So for now, let's just robotize. Why am I making up words?
I don't know.
Let's just robotize our players so that they turn up to World Cup like 6'8" and 24 stone each.
I mean, that's the other option, yeah. Take the whole size versus skill thing and actually say, all right, well, let's make it a thing.
Yeah,
they're all you know, subhuman. No, not subhuman. The opposite.
15 Lomus.
Yeah, exactly. Like they used to get in the Lomu game. When you unlock the bonuses.
Oh, mate, that was amazing.
Team of 15 Lomus.
I think it was, Team Lomu, and you also had like Rage and things. Lomu Rugby is a great computer game.
Anyway, so he finishes up his email with phew, I think that's enough for one email. I think we probably agree, but really appreciate it. Though. He says, keep up the great work, guys. Absolutely love your pod. Let the chariot keep swinging.
Legend, Felix. Thank you.
Really appreciate that. And yeah, guys, keep these emails coming. It gives us loads to talk about. Where are we at? We're at 3/4 of an hour already, and we've still got another email to go.
Should we save that for next week?
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. So Joe,
we'll definitely do it.
Joe, we have got your email. We haven't forgotten you, but yeah, time is of the essence. So we will cover your questions in our next episode. But yeah, really appreciate that, guys. It's really helpful for us to give us kind of inspiration as to what to talk about in the episodes, and hopefully it just makes things quite interesting for you guys listening, just to kind of hear our views on your opinions and your questions.
Yeah. So yeah, just moving on. So there's a few other points. I'm not looking to do the sort of review of the Premiership from last weekend. It was a good start. I see some interesting, but a few key points. Gloucester, Northampton. So as Felix said, if Northampton, look, with one match in, let's not start saying they're going to have a shit season. Let's not blow this out of proportion. But could it affect their players if you have, because in theory, you could have Laws, Hartley, Haskell playing for a team that, if they are losing, which I'm by no means saying they will be doing all the time, that could affect the England players. But on the flip side, Gloucester is top 14 this year. With Danny Cipriani, they're top 14. And Danny Cipriani has now made that 10 shirt. He's in the 10 shirt for England. George Ford didn't have a great game.
No.
Unless.
No, I mean, Cipriani... Will people be looking at that and saying, you know, his recent outing for England, there was that one moment of magic. This game against Gloucester, everyone's looking at this moment of magic. Are we going to see, just playing devil's advocate, are we going to start seeing critics saying, well, yeah, he's got that one moment of magic in him, but does he have the full package?
He had a good game. He had a good game all round.
Yeah. I mean, both of us agree we want to see him in an England shirt. This isn't me saying that I disagree. I'm just posing the question.
Devil's advocate.
Exactly.
For you little rascal.
Any other kind of things from the Premiership that stand out?
No, I think a few of them mentioned it. Like, So the flanker thing has become interesting. That's the other thing. So Underhill, actually, although Bath was shocking, quite frankly. Like, you look at the Bath team, they should be awesome. But they were shit. But Underhill did all right, actually. And he's looking good for 7. Matt Kovacic for Exeter was awesome. He's bulked up. But Rob Baxter said he's the first name on the team sheet at the moment, like his pre-season. He is a potential runner for an England spot. If he plays like that week in, week out, you can't ignore him. You've obviously got the Curry brothers who both played.
Yeah.
So 7s, we've got, a few coming through. And another person, actually for Bath again, weirdly enough, who were quite shit. And he didn't have a great game, but not a bad game, but he just looks good. Dave Atwood in the second row.
Well, yeah.
He could make the charge.
We know he's got eyes on him, so. Although second row is probably not one of the areas that we're desperately looking for new blood. But there's never a bad problem to have.
Yeah.
As long as you can still pick the best 2 and make it work.
So Marrow and Joe Longtry, I suspect, are probably.
Well, Courtney.
I've still got Marrow and Joe Longtry starting.
How did Marrow get on?
I don't know, to be honest.
I need to be seeing big things from him this season. That's not even accurate, because he was epic for Sarri's last season. We need to be seeing big things from him in an England shirt. I don't know what it is. Yeah. He needs to, get rid of whatever that thing is that he has that just has somehow stopped him from being as good for England as he is for Saracens, and turn it around. Because it's not like he's jinxed by an England shirt. Because when he first came on the scene, he was awesome for England,
ripping up roads.
He needs to switch it back on again. But looking forward to seeing that.
So that'll be interesting. Hopefully, Marrow can get that moving, get that going. Lewington for Saracens looked good, but Leicester. This is the thing. Actually, I am jumping around a lot here. But Leicester backs. So we're saying about England. I'm going to Manu here. Manu Tuilagi. I didn't touch the ball for like half hour. And when he did, he's looking strong, mate. He is looking. I mean, he had a few runs where you're like, "Hello." We
know Eddie likes that, and has said on numerous occasions that Manu Tuilagi is the kind of guy that can break a New Zealand defence and create problems for them.
So why do Leicester kick the ball away every time? Think about Leicester's backs, and all they do is kick it away. I can't believe it.
Maybe they're protecting him. Maybe they don't want him to get the ball because they don't want him getting injured. And just having him on the pitch draws in an extra man. So you don't get the ball. We don't want you running with the ball. You just run around on the field, and people will kind of cover you, and that way we open up a gap somewhere else.
Yeah, and just every now and again we'll just use you to smash and hurt people. And for the love of God, don't jump off any more boats. But he is, mate. I have nothing factual basis on. I've got a feeling about Manu this year. I think this is Manu's year.
Yeah,
I think he's going to have a good year. Turn up to World Cup. Let's need to stop using their players, because they've got awesome players. And if they start using them,
I think the important thing to remember is that it's game one.
Exactly.
And it doesn't set the tone for the Premiership. So, lots still to see. It'll be like last season where this sort of thing happened and we were going, oh, no, what about this? What about that? And then literally the following week, the other teams it was the other way around.
I've given myself a license to do that, though. I've allowed myself
and so you should. But I'm just saying, next week we may well be saying, and pointing fingers at all the teams that won this weekend. So we shall see what happens, and hopefully, and I hope we do, because it keeps it interesting. Then keeps people on their toes, and it means that the players are learning and from what's happening and reacting to it, which is what we want. That's the key, isn't it? Is that they don't get kind of bogged down in the results, and they find a way to turn it around and come back stronger. And
it's good. And going back to Felix's thing, I want the England boys, and as a lot of the main pundits and things said, there is just an edge to this season because of the World Cup. So people are just putting in that bit more, which is great. But there's a few people who do need to stand up.
Well, we will certainly be keeping an eye out for them and reporting where is necessary. Before we finish up, quick.
I've got a few more points. I want to go.
Okay, go on then. Crack on.
So I will go quickly. This is looking at England as a whole. So I want to do so just to go. So Eddie Jones, I quite like this. Had a chat with Tony Smedbury, the head of referees, about the breakdown area. He wants the referees to make that more competitive because, as we found out last year in the Six Nations, the Premiership didn't compete the breakdown, whereas everyone else in the world did. And then in the Six Nations, we just got pushed off the ball because they were competing, we weren't. So I think Eddie's been quite smart doing that, having a chat and saying, can you ref that, allow that to be a competition? But now I'm going to sort of go against Eddie. So there just seems to be something a bit wrong in that camp at the moment, but not necessarily. A lot of the staff have left, be it like kitmen or something. And I'm pretty sure Kitman did leave. You look at Paul Gussard, he's left. And fair enough, different job. But it looks like John Mitchell's coming in as the defence coach, which is going to cost a fortune, whatever. I don't care about that. But he's not having a great record with things at the moment. Sean Edwards applied for the job. He said this himself. He applied for the job and just got dismissed. I don't understand how Sean Edwards doesn't get that over John Mitchell. Andy Farrell was apparently offered the job and turned it down, which I completely get.
Yeah.
Because he's with Ireland and they're doing great things.
And Eddie already got rid of him once.
Yeah. Fuck you, Eddie. But it's but I understand. I'm sure Andy Farrell doesn't have that much of an ego. I'm sure if it was right, he would have taken it. But I don't. John Mitchell. So somebody mentioned this. I can't remember even mentioned or I read it somewhere. So I looked into it. I don't understand what he's bringing to the table. Maybe I think he's just on board with the sort of Eddie mentality, but his record as a defence coach of recent times is actually quite poor. So I was just a little concerned. So I don't know, because maybe the cultural thing is a big part, and maybe they've sort of had a chat and there's a specific way they want to play the defence. And maybe that's not how John Mitchell's current team plays, but John Mitchell's an expert at implementing that. I don't know. But I'm a little worried about that. We still don't have an attack coach.
No. Hopefully that's not Eddie trying to pretend he's looking and actually wants the job himself, even though he hasn't.
No, so what was the guy's name? Was it Wiseman or something who did it for South Africa? But not with huge success, if we're honest, did he?
No.
Like our attack is a bit stale, so whether he's the answer, I don't know. But I don't really understand why this is all taking so long. I kind of get
it is bizarre, isn't it? You would expect people would be jumping to join the England setup, apart from anything else, just with the amount of money that we've got, and therefore have the ability to pay them. So it's an interesting one. It's frustrating, but I guess. For we don't need someone until we actually get together again and start training again. So the key thing is that they have someone in time for when actually the players come together. You bring someone on now, they're not going to do anything until they come together. But time's running out.
Yeah, time is running out because they need to be completely sort of embedded within the setup so that when the players are there, it's not a case of them still finding their way. They can say, right, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And this is how, because also, I don't know this, so I have no idea, but is John Mitchell and Paul Gussard, are they going to have a similar defence pattern? If not, do England have time to learn new? It's just, I think I'm overcomplicating it, but it is a bit of a worry.
I don't disagree, mate. I don't disagree.
That was all I had.
Huh?
And that was all I had. Sorry, it sounds like I'm boring you.
No, I thought you said you had a few things you wanted to talk about.
No, so I sort of pulled them into one. So it was with the ref with Tony Smedbury about the staff, about the sort of coaches.
And what about New Zealand?
Not mate. Just saying that they are looking very good. So this is a huge test will be to see how England and Ireland get on against New Zealand in the autumn, because New Zealand are just looking so good at the moment. And good, we need to test it because we're going to win the World Cup. So we need to understand what we need to beat.
Do we think that? I mean, I know I do think that New Zealand, well, any of the Southern Hemisphere teams that seem to be kind of firing, well, actually that's probably not fair because South Africa's probably doesn't really fit into that, but certainly like Australia and New Zealand, you see these massive scorelines and the result. I mean, you told me that the New Zealand press were putting out releases saying, you just give us the World Cup now. It's as good as a done deal. And
how are the New Zealand rugby players so like humble and nice, and their press are such dickheads?
Yeah, no, I know. But like, is there an I mentioned to you the other week, earlier this week when we were talking about this. Northern Hemisphere teams don't tend to get dicked by New Zealand.
Yeah, the top teams, yeah.
Sure, they lose, but they don't get dicked. Whereas Australia goes up against them and has these kinds of results where it's massively high scoring and they get hammered.
Northern Hemisphere teams, see, I don't think England and Ireland do, but actually they can put a fair bit on like Wales and France when they play them. Not always. But they can.
My point
England
is,
and Ireland
it's clearly a different.
No, I agree.
It's clearly a different style of rugby, and clearly the way that the Northern Hemisphere play, generally speaking, doesn't gift as many opportunities. At least not for the high-scoring tries. So what is that? What is that thing? What are we doing differently to say Australia that means that New Zealand aren't able to score 10 tries in a match?
We play a tighter game. I mean, Australia have got some absolutely quality players, but to me, and this is just, Australia seems to be trying to play the same game as New Zealand. You can't do that. You're not going to beat them at their game. They are too good. I think they're the best sporting team ever at the moment, the way they're playing. So, whereas I think the Northern Hemisphere, if you look at England and Ireland, they put on like a really sort of quick press defence. They keep it a lot tighter, whereas Australia play a bit looser, but that's just them, isn't it?
I mean, that's the key, right?
Barrett scores 4 tries and I think had 1 disallowed. Who the hell scores 4 tries?
But that's the key. It's having 80 minutes of not giving up kind of gifted opportunities and just biding your time and waiting for the opportunity to present itself to you. When you've got someone like a Johnny May who can do what a Johnny May can do, to name one player on the England side. If England can keep New Zealand from scoring too many points and from running away with the game, we know we've got the players with the quality to score points.
England can beat New Zealand. England can beat New Zealand, but New Zealand are a better. Like New Zealand, I think wins 7 out of 10. Maybe.
Okay, so final question for you then: autumn internationals. We're obviously playing New Zealand. That's the big one. What's acceptable from an England perspective? Obviously, we want to win.
Yeah, obviously, but I think the loss is acceptable as long as we're just not completely dominated in all areas.
So
we must compete in all areas. So points wise, the
ability to score points, taking points when they're on offer, making the right decisions, all that kind of stuff.
So yes, that. In actual fact, I'd almost rather we lost because we made wrong decisions. So that can be things. What I don't want to see is us being in the game because our defence was so good that day, but their attack completely outplayed ours. We need to, like, in attack, in defence, we need to be competing in all areas. And, because it would really worry me if it's like New Zealand are so much better than us at this, because there's just not really the time to fix it. So I want us to be, I'm not saying be as good as them, but be to a level where it'll be like on our day, we can be better than them in attack, in defence, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. So basically, yeah, it can't be, even if we do lose, which we don't think is going to happen. Touching a lot of wooden things. But if we do lose, for it not to be a kind of foregone conclusion with a quarter of the game still to go, basically. England needs to be in it. There needs to be. We need to kind of have hope and realistic belief that it's still possible right up until the end, if it does turn out to be a loss.
Yeah, it can't be an heroic loss because we just fought for every tackle and made it hard. It's got to be.
Yeah, we don't want to be camped on our try line for 20 minutes and just manage to keep them out. And, unfortunately, they win by 3, because that might be, nice to say, well, what's good defence, but it's clearly not good enough to win a game.
We need to be able to show that we can take New Zealand apart as well. We need to be able to show that even if we don't score a load of times, we need to be able to show that on our day we can score tries.
And, historically, the way that you do that to New Zealand is you put them under pressure. It doesn't happen very often. It's something they're not particularly well drilled for, is being put under pressure, being put on the back foot. We know from experience that when England has done that in the past, that's when they've won. Because New Zealand suddenly find themselves in a pretty difficult. Yeah, exactly. New Zealand suddenly find themselves in an unusual situation that they're not really prepared for. Which kind of is why I was saying about the style of gameplay. They're so used to just running tries in for fun that it's almost like that's the only way they know how to play. And that sounds, they're obviously unbelievably good at doing it. But if you can somehow stick a spanner in the works there, I think you create opportunities by taking them a little bit by surprise. And at that point, that's when you need a world-class attack, combined with a world-class defence, in order to say, we're now going to take advantage of the opportunities that you're gifting us. And that's the other key thing, isn't it? Is when the opportunities present themselves, it's taking them.
Yeah, and I agree with that.
Don't leave anything. Don't leave anything on the field, basically.
Yeah, some of the decisions on the Premiership this weekend. Bath, they went like Tom Homer, he ran over the line and he went to put the ball down and knocked it on. Like, that was just a silly mistake. It's nothing wrong, but they had so many kickable points that they just didn't take. So it was really going to annoy me if England do that.
Well, I think that with Dylan Hartley back and Owen Farrell, we've talked about it before, but Owen Farrell back being the kicker, with someone who can tell him what to do. I think Dylan Hartley has a mentality to kind of say, yeah, we want points, or to know when the right call is to go for the corner. And Owen Farrell can just do what he's asked to do. I think that will be good. I think there's less, fingers crossed we don't see silly calls. But yeah, we shall see. Well, look, that's probably a good place to stop, because we've droned on for a little while, and we could go on for another hour, but we're not going to. We'll save some of it for the next episode, but
which will be next week, we promise.
It will be, yes. But yeah, I think another good one there.
Yeah,
guys, thanks so much
good to know, guys. Thanks,
thanks for sticking with us. And if you've got questions,
I couldn't say it like that. Mate, it's a joy. We bring joy to them.
Thanks for enjoying what we're doing. We'll be back hopefully Tuesday, Wednesday next week with another instalment. If you've got questions, ping them over on an email. It's englandrugbypod@gmail.com. You can also get in touch with us on social media. We're at England Rugby Pod on Twitter and Facebook and whatnot. So get in touch. Tell us what you think. Don't forget to head over to iTunes, drop us a rating, drop us a review, and we will catch you guys next week.